the crown, roll keys to bats. My team, my vision, placing bold bets. Strategies drawn with passion and might. Great iron tactics will overnight. Set my line up, it's time, gotta make that call. Dynasty dreams, I won't let them fall. Every yard, every play, it's all on me. The future's bright, champions you'll see. Hold the line and fight the sound. In Dynasty, we'll own this ground. Trading players, build it strong. In this league, we'll right the wrong.
Good day, all of you paying attention to the Fantasy Flyer Fiddy Tree season. We are back. It is Derek in the hangar that has been once again rearranged in some sense. I am back with episode 4 of our 5 for the Charge into Battle series. My eyes look really, really closed right now. I am sitting a little further back from the computer than I normally am. But anyway, we're going to cover Tolbertus, Galactus, and Bijan Mustard today, headed by Ian and Matt, respectively. And we're going to go through all of their rosters and just see where they rank out. So far, current leader in the clubhouse is Zach with a 7.9. And then there's a whole host of teams between 7.2 and 7.4. And then Doran is right below them at 6.9. 69. Nice. But yeah, right now we're going to hop right into it. We're not going to take any time out of the day. Let's go right to Ian's roster. All right, and we are here with Ian's roster. His rosterman for the Jamaicans. Shout out to my Jamaican folk. Hope you guys are having fun down there. Ian's roster, start off with the quarterback position. Of course, you have Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Brock Purdy. This is probably, I'm not even going to say probably, this is the best quarterback room in the league. Just because Brock Purdy is his number 3 option, and Brock Purdy is better than a number 3. There's a number 1 and a number 2, and they might be the piss and shit, but Brock Purdy, he's the number 3. And I mean, you can't complain about this. You know, if we're talking money during the offseason, this might be something where you could be like, well, you got to think about it. No, this was a concern maybe at one point for Ian, but he did not. He kept all 3 of these guys. I love that. I mean, his third option is somebody who's like QB 12. Like Josh Allen's a QB 1 or QB 2 in fantasy. You know, his goal line and his rushing ability just helps him stay there. Patrick Mahomes is floor QB 9, you know, like definitely QB 10. Like he's not outside that. He didn't have a great fantasy year last year, but you know, there were wide receivers in Kansas City that were dropping balls like it was a puberty convention. So I mean, I feel like I can't give this less than like an 8.4 or 8.5, and I really think with the way this is structured, you know, if I'm saying 10 is in terms of this, a 10 for any group would be the top 3 or 4 options depending on what player position group it is. But you have 3 of the top 12 at minimum, and in reality, their average finish positions in fantasy over the last 3 years, we'll say Brock Purdy's really only, you know, he only has a shorter leash, so we'll leave him, but he's the QB3. So, you know, Mahomes and Allen's been top 3 the last 3 years, and Mahomes has been no less than, I think he was a QB7 last year, or QB6, and then the last 2 years before that he was top 4. So this is an 8.8 for me. I'm going to give an 8.8 to this QB room. It is very stacked, and you can assume out of the 2 quarterbacks that he starts, any 2 of the starting quarterbacks in this group, that you're going to get 50 to 55 fantasy points, if not maybe even higher, on a consistent basis. So that's an 8.8 on his QB room. We're going to go down to the running backs. We have Jahmyr Gibbs, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey. After that, it gets a little shaky. Miles Sanders might see the field at some point this year. I think he will in the first few weeks, probably with Chuba. He'll be he's the number 3 in Carolina. Will Shipley is there. Jamal Williams, man. But the real home run hitters here, obviously, Kamara, Gibbs, and McCaffrey. There's been rumors now. I'm filming this Wednesday morning. There's been, some evidence pointing to Alvin Kamara moving on from New Orleans at some point in the near future. His house is up for sale. There was something else that point he put his house up for sale, and there was something else that had pointed to him. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but either way, bottom line is that's not right now. So if I'm going into the season, I'm going to assume from a fantasy perspective that he's going to be in New Orleans all year, and he is going to be fantasy relevant all year, which is probably very true even at his age. Jahmyr Gibbs is looking for an expanded role. He had 261 fantasy points, and he missed like 2 games last year. And on top of that, I think he eclipses David Montgomery. He can potentially take some goal line snaps from him. It doesn't sound like it would be too frequent, but I would not be surprised. And obviously, he's the pass-catching back. He's more explosive. Christian McCaffrey is Christian McCaffrey. So for me, I'm going to give this group an 8.4. And again, the only reason is a little bit of depth I'm taking off there. Also, Alvin Kamara's, he's probably not going to be in the top 10 running backs, but I could see him for sure in the top 20. And then I think Gibbs and McCaffrey are top 7, top 8, even if they're hampered a little bit by different offensive schemes. I don't think San Francisco or Detroit trail very much this year, so I think running is going to be well into the realm of game plans for both of those teams. So I'll go 8.4 for this group. To the wide receiver position. Wide receivers, DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, Puka Nacua, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. A solid 4. Similar to the running back, there isn't a whole heck of a lot of impressive depth beyond that. A lot of people are hyping up Curtis Samuel in Buffalo. I don't understand that. I mean, he's a good utility guy, but I just don't see him. He's always going to be the 3rd on the depth chart, which I guess is a curse and a blessing, right? Is Keon Coleman is going to step up. He's going to Curtis Samuel is going to overtake like Matt Collins, who is currently, as of this recording, ahead of Keon Coleman as the wide receiver 1. Why? I don't know. I don't make the rules. I am just reporting things to you. So he is the 1. Khalil Shakir is the 2, and then the 3 is Curtis Samuel. I think the only thing that would swap in that scenario is that Matt Collins would end up going behind Keon Coleman, and that would happen probably pretty quickly. So that's the official depth chart as it sits for week 1. Again, to me, it doesn't make sense. I don't think that the wide receiver 3 position in Buffalo, just like we saw last year with Khalil Shakir, I don't think that position has a lot of value. I think it's a lot of Dalton Kincaid. I think it's a lot of James Cook. I think it's a lot of Josh Allen. Those are probably the first 3 that are going to eat. That's the reality of the situation. After that, you can start looking at wide receivers because there's not a Stephon Diggs there. There is going to be targets that get passed out, obviously. Josh Allen threw the ball an average of 30 times or close to last year per game. And that's with a couple of games where weather didn't allow him to throw the ball a lot. So, you can assume 35 to 38, 40 pass attempts a game on average. And that's still plenty for a Keon Coleman or a Khalil Shakir, or in the sense of maybe a good slot role, Curtis Samuel. So I don't hate the salary's great for $3. Why not? Josh Palmer probably going to start the season. I didn't look at the Chargers depth chart. Probably the 1 for the Chargers currently. Lad McConkey will probably quickly overtake him, but that also provides good fantasy relevance still at the wide receiver 2. Justin Herbert's a flamethrower. Darnell Mooney is probably going to be an afterthought in Atlanta, but again, depth piece. Jahan Dotson doesn't exist in a fantasy realm where I'm interested in it, but he's there. If there is a Devontae Smith or an A.J. Brown injury, he becomes immediately fantasy relevant. Rashad Bateman, question marks there, but again, the target share is open in Baltimore, so depth-wise, it's a little shaky, but it's not the worst. And then if you're talking about the forefront, Puka, Christian Kirk, DeAndre Hopkins, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown, top 5 wide receiver in the league. Puka Nacua right there as well. Christian Kirk, top 20 to top 30 in the league, and that's, question mark. Brian Thomas coming in. There is some snaps available with Calvin Ridley leaving. However, Calvin Ridley leaving has now put him with DeAndre Hopkins, so there's an interesting dynamic with those guys. I'm going to go with a 7.6 on these guys. I like the wide receiver group on the front. The depth isn't as bad as, some of the conversations that me and Ian had. He didn't think that his depth was all that great. I don't think it's the worst. I don't think it's the worst in the league, to be quite frank. But I'll give it a 7.6. I think as long as Puka and Amon-Ra stay healthy, there is two heavy, heavy names that you can rely on there in his fantasy realm. I have to save this file right now on my other computer. Do not hate. Pause. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I'm still a piece of garbage. Next tight end room for Ian. Oh, there's that. We have Gerald Everett, Hayden Hurst, Cole Kmet, Dawson Knox, Colby Parkinson, Tommy Tremble. They will be in a starting lineup for him, but they are bad. Gerald Everett, tight end 2 behind Cole Kmet. I guess Cole Kmet is probably the only one who has any immediate fantasy relevance, and I think I'm not saying anything shocking when I say he's probably the 4th passing option in Chicago. That being said, rookie quarterbacks and tight ends kind of get along together. It's like a peanut butter and jelly for a little bit until they feel comfortable expanding. The one thing I will point out about the Chicago offense is we don't know exactly how efficient Caleb Williams is going to be. We don't know exactly how well that offensive line is going to be. It does need a little bit of help still to get to as efficient as some of the best in the league. And I think that there is a good argument for all of the wide receivers being passing options one, before we start talking about Cole Kmet. So I think in terms of just from his point of view and a fantasy relevance, on a scale of 1 to 5 stars, he's about a 2 to 2.5 stars. Everybody else here, to me, honestly, Colby Parkinson is a dart throw, and I like the dart throw. I was very interested in him in the free agency auction. Didn't work out. That's how that works. But 1.5 stars for him potentially, and then there isn't really a lot else here that I like. Dawson Knox has a little bit, just because again, target share available in Buffalo, but I'm really not thrilled with the rest of this entire tight end room as it sits. This is going to be a 5.3 for me, and I think that's that's given leeway for this to grow. If Colby Parkinson is as efficient as he can be out of that tight end role, we know there's no Tyler Higbee for most, if not all, of the year. He can be. This could go up to a high 5. If you get Dawson Knox and you get a Kincaid injury, Dawson Knox becomes fantasy relevant. This is in the low 6s for me. I think Cole Kmet, if he surprises me and comes out with a 6 touchdown or 5 touchdown year and takes 400 yards, I think then this goes up into the mid to upper 6s. And you start seeing some of the scale move up. But for me, as the way it sits, again, same with Alvin Kamara going into the season, we're assuming he's there. I'm assuming that these positions don't change too much. And for me, that just seems like it's like a 5.3 for me. Sounds about right. I'm still not high on Tommy Tremble being anything useful to that Carolina offense. He's never had more than 35 catches in a year, and that's 2 a game. So that's not someone you're going to have a lot of faith starting. So 5.3 for the tight end group for me. And then we go on to defense, which, as I've said, for most of these defenses, we're not going to be looking at so much the scoring aspect and how they split so much, because I want to see how these guys roll. I had mentioned it in the first few videos. Defense is going to be a little bit more of an even playing field until I see how these scores look after 1 year. Defensively, Trey Hendrickson, Bryce Huff, very interesting. I'm intrigued as to why he left the Jets. He had a great year. Was it last year or the year before? Chris Jones, Justin Matabuke for the linebackers. Frankie Louvu, Bobby Okereke, Bobby Wagner for $6. I didn't know we got Wagner in the free agency auction. Cornerback, we got Kenny Moore, Jalen Ramsey, L'Jarius Sneed, Patrick Surtain for $1. He just got a huge contract this morning. Reed Blankenship, Julian Love, Jordan Poyer. Honestly, probably a really solid defensive core. Who are you? Chris Jones, you can depend on. I know he had his contract issues last year at Kansas City that kind of held him down a little bit. Trey Hendrickson, sure. I mean, Cincinnati's defense is You don't want to mess with it. They're really underrated. TJ Watt too. I didn't even see TJ Watt here. $10 on TJ Watt. You go. Frankie Louvu. Yeah, I like Louvu in Washington. They need so much defensive help. He fits that bill so well. Bobby Okereke was, I mean, probably not the defensive stalwart he was last year just because of all the pieces they put around him, but he's going to contribute very nicely. Bobby Wagner, also in Washington, didn't notice that. So they're looking to boost that run block a little bit, it looks, in Washington. That is intriguing. L'Jarius Sneed in Tennessee. He's a little heartbroken that he left Kansas City. Kenny Moore, solid. I like the Patrick Surtain for $1 nonetheless out of the auction. Smart there. All right, for me, I'm going to go 7.3. I'm going to go 7.3 on this defense. This is going to be one of the higher scores, so prepare your pants, everybody. Prepare your pants. More quick math for everybody. 8.8 on the quarterbacks, 8.4 on the running back, 7.6 the wide receiver position, tight end 5.3, and then defense 7.3. So, once again, more. I'm gonna calculate this tight end a little higher just because I'll do that 5.3, 8.8, 8.4, 7.6. This is the most boring part of it for you guys, I know. I'm super sorry. I should probably do this off camera when we're all said and done at the end of the videos. But I don't feel like doing that. So, 8 points. We're going to have 8.4 is the average there, 5.3. It's another, I think it's another 7.8. Hold on. Pause with me.
A few moments later.
All right. So, after calculations, I have a 7.8 for Ian at Tolbertus Galactus. So, we're going to go with the 7.8. Very solid. Second in the clubhouse. And again, if the tight end position works out a little bit better, this is easily right there above PCs. And to be quite frank, the tight end scoring and the difference between the two groups might only be that could actually even these rosters out a little bit. It all depends on what kind of points you're giving up there. So when I compare just specifically Zach and Ian's roster, I see Zach's quarterbacks being able to score maybe the same or a little under. I see the wide receivers a little a little above actually, but just between, assuming Chase gets his contract, assuming AJ does AJ things. I think that there's a little bit of leeway, depth pieces. I like the wide receiver group just a hair more for Zach. Running backs easily tips in favor of Ian, but the difference in tight ends is probably 4 to 6 points per tight end. Between Evan Ingram and Mark Andrews versus what'll probably be Cole Kmet and Dawson Knox maybe, or Colby Parkinson. So that's what makes this really tough as far as an even. And then, of course, I'm trying to keep defense in the same realm as well because, again, not going to spread them too much. But 7.8 for Ian, second in the clubhouse. And, again, with some better tight end play than what the group shows going into the year, that could easily be a 7, 9, or an 8. I have him with 9 wins as well as I wrote 9 wins, but I think I have the same. Yeah, 8 to 9 wins with PC. So what I'm already noticing, we have 3 teams left, one for this video and then a whole nother video. What I'm already noticing is that I think the big separation here for a lot of these teams is going to come down to injuries. A couple of injuries, they're going to happen. It's a thing in football. It all depends on who gets injured and who can rebound, which means depth matters. The interesting piece is that the 2 highest ranked teams, I think, have probably 2 of the bottom 4 in depth, bottom 3 in depth. And that might be a little bit of a hot take, but that's going to bring that could bring squeeze everybody even closer together with these 6 to 7 win teams, and then Ian and Zach being at the 8 to 9 range. It could easily, a couple bad performances. Like I said, those injuries start cropping up, and you could see this be like a lot of teams in that 5 to 7 range. I haven't seen, so far through 7 teams, I haven't seen any spots where I can look at a team and go, you're going to lose a lot of points at that position. There's a lot of teams that may not have the wide receiver 1 through 8 or 1 through 10 or any of those positions, but the upside of some of the wide receiver 20 that are projected for these guys, the upside for that is so like it's good enough where that you can kind of look at these guys and go, there's no real reason to believe that this group of 4 wide receivers that are between wide receiver 15 and wide receiver 50 on our projections can't beat this team that has 2 of the top 10 wide receivers and 2 wide receivers that are from wide receiver 60 to 80. So, or 40 to 60 or whatever. So I feel like there's enough of a correlation with the way these teams are built that it seems like it's going to be really competitive this year, which is a blessing because we haven't had that really in Fiddy Tree. So that's my little piece in the middle. Now I will change the screen over. We will start talking about Matt and Bijan Mustard. If my computer doesn't skip, and it doesn't. Okay, and it does, and it doesn't, and I don't know. Scroll down here. Let me find Matt's real quick. Old Bijan Mustard, named so since the beginning of last year, when he picked up Bijan as the first overall pick. So here we go. We'll start off with the cornerback room, quarterback room. For Matt, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, Tua Tagovailoa. It's not heartwarming, really. Geno Smith is 50-50, right? This is a whole new offense that's coming to Seattle. From what we've seen in camp, from what we've seen as their play development, from what we've heard from players, and from the past history, it just seems like this coaching staff is going to go more pass-heavy. That could be a good thing, and that could be a bad thing for Geno. He's had streaks where he has been extremely efficient passing the football, 70% completion percentage. He's done really well, obviously 2 years ago showing that. This year, he's got to kind of go back to that. Last year, he dipped a little bit, had more interceptions, was more, I would say, hesitant throwing the football. Tua Tagovailoa, obviously in a top 5 offense, he's going to be fantasy relevant. His issue is when he gets under pressure. That O-line is not amazing in Miami. It's probably their only glaring weakness. Defensive line hasn't really taken a step forward by losing Christian Wilkins, but overall, Miami, as long as Tua can improve a little under pressure and he doesn't get sacked, again, Miami loses 80% of their games when Tua Tagovailoa gets sacked 4 times. That's a lot, and it's hard, as a lot of teams probably show similar to that, but it stands out that for a great offense, that's really where the line breaks for them. Daniel Jones, obviously, if he doesn't get a bounce back here, his contract is probably a cut, and he is probably a cut next offseason. So at least he has something to prove. For me, this doesn't scream like amazing group that I would love to trust going into the year. I will say Michael Penix, just kind of sitting and waiting and wait, is very. I guess it's a little bit of a good peace of mind for next year. Maybe Daniel Jones is out and Michael Penix takes over for Kirk Cousins. I think, again, Atlanta would be wasting their money to do that, but we've seen crazier things happen, right? Penix showed in the preseason he's very efficient. So for me, this is going to be a 6.6, and that's simply because Tua is there with a great offense. I'm very skeptical on Seattle, on Geno Smith. I have him as my quarterback 21 on the year, and that's probably too low. I get that that's probably too low, but I'm preparing myself for, is it 21? Nope, lied. 19, wrong side of 20. I was reading the list going down, and it goes down to 1, and it goes up. So, quarterback 19 is, that could be worse. That could be, I think he could do a lot better. It all depends on how his completion percentage rises. I have Tua Tagovailoa right at, I think, quarterback 10 or 11 on the year. He's going to be perfectly fine. Daniel Jones doesn't crack the top 20. I don't even need to look at my list at that, but that's because I've lost a lot of faith in him. So for me, a 6.6 for this group is how I'm going to start off for Matt, and we will move along to the running back position, which will be stronger. The reason I know it's going to be stronger is because he has Kyron Williams and Bijan Robinson. He also has Blake Corum, who will eventually probably encroach on Kyron Williams a little bit. Kyron Williams, I'll go back to my rankings now that I've actually completed them. minus the wide receivers. He is my running back 13 on the year. So, and in this league, it could be a little different because we get punt return points as well, which it's been noted that he's the punter. Bijan Robinson is my running back 4. Joe Mixon is, I think, running back 14 or 15. I think he's right around Kyron. This is a solid group. I don't have Najee anywhere in my top 15. I don't see him having as huge of a role as people are putting him on for. I know he's going to be the goal line back, but he's just horribly been really not that efficient the last few years. A lot of attempts, which helps him get fantasy points across because you don't lose points if you attempt 40 rushes. It all depends on the yards and the touchdowns. So from a fantasy perspective, I guess he's very suitable for this league. In reality, I can see 5 of the 6 people in this group starting. I can see Corum, Najee, Mixon, Bijan, and Kyron all starting at some point during the year. I do think that there is a little bit of room for growth as far as being the best running back group. We just saw Ian's, with both of these teams going. However, also really, really like the ability to put any of these 5 that I was talking about in the starting lineup and trust on them. If Blake Corum does end up being the change of pace in the goal line back, is it Kyron? Are there going to be weeks where you're going to have Kyron and Blake in your starting lineup? Is Joe Mixon going to be able to continue his streak of being an efficient PPR running back? Is Bijan going to be able to eclipse 65-70% snaps and not lose goal line snaps to Tyler Algier as it's been rumored? So there's some questions. Obviously, I just asked a couple of them. But in my opinion, I think this is a solid 7-6 group, 7-7. I might even go up a little bit more because I do like the idea of having Corum as the handcuff. There is no other security blanket for if there's 2 injuries, however. And that's plausible at the running back position. I'm going to move this up just a hair. I'll go 7-8. I do like it. It is our second best running back group behind Ian's, and I think that's fair to say. So I'll go 7.8 at the running back group for Matt. Wide receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr., DK Metcalf, Jalen Waddle, Chris Godwin, Keenan Allen. A few mid-tier wide receivers there. I say mid-tier being basically anything outside the top 20 expected projection. Not looking at my own, but just saying as far as Keenan Allen goes, Chris Godwin, probably on the bottom end of that 20 or right around the top end of the non-top 20 is DK Metcalf. I don't remember where I have Metcalf ranked. I do know that I like his increased workload that he should get from the pass game now that it's not a run-centric offense in Seattle. Again, he doesn't lose points for interceptions, technically. Jalen Waddle pairing with Tua is also a very positive, assuming, again, he can stay healthy. He does get banged up sometimes. And Marvin Harrison Jr., who's probably going to be a top 7 wide receiver, top 10 wide receiver after this year. I think looking into next year, you're going to be looking at him in that, what we see this year as Puka, Michael Pittman, Amon-Ra St. Brown, right in the middle, like that top half of the second 10, bottom half of the first 10 group, and maybe even a little higher. So this is a very solid wide receiver group. A little bit more intriguing on the depth side, again, with those mid-tier, quote-unquote, mid-tier scorers. I'm using mid-tier very, very scarcely. I'm going to go 7-7 here. I think it's just a hair better than Ian's. On a depth side, you do have other options. If Keenan Allen goes down, you can put in Marvin Harrison and Jalen Waddle and DK Metcalf, which will probably be the starting 3 most weeks. Adonai Mitchell may very quickly take the 2 in Indianapolis. Marvin Mims probably not going to be super useful unless there is an injury to Cortland Sutton and that offense improves quickly with Bo Nix. Chris Godwin had an off year last year and still put up 200 fantasy points. So I'm going to put 7.7 here. We'll move on to the tight ends, which include Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid, Daniel Bellinger, Theo Johnson. if you watched any of my rookie my rookie sleepers, I'm a big fan of Theo Johnson. He's an athletic freak for someone who's bigger than Daniel Bellinger. I really quickly think that offense turns around next year, and I think he just as quickly takes over the tight end one spot because I just like the prospect that he is. But the two names that obviously stand out here are Kyle Pitts and Dalton Kincaid. Both projected. I think Pitts is my tight end 5 on the year. I think Kincaid is my tight end 4. So, looking at those two, I really like. I have big faith in this group. I don't have to spend a lot of time on this one. I'm gonna go with a 7-6, 7-7, just because there isn't nothing. You know what? I'll bump it up a little bit because you only need 2, and he's got 2. Although they do have the same bye week. I retract that statement. We'll stick at 7-7, just because it's going to be a little hurting in week 12. It is 1/13 of the regular season. Okay, so if you're thinking about it in that sense, you're talking about a little over a little over 13% of the season there, or no, a little over 7% of the season. Did my math backwards. So I got to take a little bit off. I'll stick with a 7-7 at the tight end position, which is a healthy number. And then defensively, Christian Wilkins fills a big hole with the Raiders there. Giggity. Boye Mafe, Lucas Van Ness, who should be taking another defensive leap forward on the right hand side for Green Bay. Linebackers: Devin Lloyd, Ivan Pace, EJ Speed, Ernest Jones. Cornerback, you have Roger McCreary, Demodoir Lenoir, Razul Douglas. Those are probably the big 3. Roger McCreary, I guess, as well. And then Jesse Bates, Jimmy Ward, Kirby Joseph. The secondary pieces don't seem as impressive, with the exception, really, of Jesse Bates. Razul Douglas is solid as well. Defensive end looks very solid. Josh Hines Allen, Alex Highsmith, Christian Wilkins. Linebackers, very mid as well. I'm going to go 6.7 on this group. They will all serve very sufficiently. It's just, is this the most impressive group of them with the defensive names that I've seen? It is not. So 6.7. That is going to lead me with a 7.5. I did really quick math on that one, but it's real easy when you have quarterback 6.6, running back 7.8, wide receiver 7.7, tight end 7.7, defensively 6.7. I think my math is correct on a 7.5 on that one real quick. I'm going to go with another 7 to 8 win here. I think it's in the cards. The roster on paper, again, doesn't look like it would be massively, especially with that quarterback position. It doesn't look like it's massively the most intimidating. I think this is my nominee through 8 teams for Sleeper Team of the Year that Matt has put together here. I think there's a lot of question marks around Kyron. For him, it doesn't matter. He has quorum. There's a lot of question marks around Daniel Jones. His floor is helped by his rushing ability. Geno Smith with that passing offense, he should at least see equal to what he had last year, if not a little bit of a bump up, even if he does throw another couple interceptions. Tua is in a great offense. Wide receiver-wise, great depth, all good starters, all in that. I would be happy with these starters on a redraft league, let alone in a dynasty league, when you're not talking so much about contracts and you're talking about direct annual influence. And I think it especially helps that, for the most part, these guys are really young. DK Metcalf is 26. Marvin Harrison just got drafted. Adonai Mitchell just got drafted. Marvin Mims is really young. Jalen Waddle's 24. The only really grandfather of the group is Keenan Allen. No offense, Keenan. And then the tight end position with Pitts and Kincaid is also, I mean, it's there for one of the better tight end groups right now. And I expect Pitts to be much improved because of Kirk Cousins. So big ups to the construction for Matt. Next up, I'm going to show you these numbers. We only have one episode left after this, kids. Next episode is going to be Taylor's roster and then my roster. For the first time ever to the Fiddy Tree guys, I will try and unbiasedly rank my own roster. And I will probably get a little flack one way or another because I don't think I'm going to do very well on my own roster. But we'll find out. For Derek and the Fantasy Flyer, you know what episode it is. I'm just going to pop up my usual, and you guys are going to have a good day, okay? All right? You'll see me very shortly with that 5th episode of our Charge into Battle series. Take care.
Bob Barker reminding you, help control the pet population. Have your pet spayed or neutered. Goodbye, everybody.